why that became the individual, not the land.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the consultant, can you elaborate on the future of the Lehman Dam Reservoir that services Delhi and, of course, Cortland as well? Talks about it on page 147 of the agenda package, that it's in a vulnerable area as set out in the provincial policy statement.
Through the mayor, to comment on the future of it, I don't know that we can from planning's perspective. If you were talking about the continued use of it, that would be something from
yes.
Public Works, not from ourselves.
Okay, so I take it Sean doesn't have the answer on that. What about, there was a note that came by a while back, and it had wells 3A and B that supply Delhi. Why is there 2 extra wells being discussed as 3A and B over and above the 2 that are already there?
Through the mayor, there has been 2 additional wells added. So what we need to keep straight is this is coming from the approved source protection plan. And when I brought you the report last week, it's about the changes because of having done the water quantity work, the Tier 3 work, and we know that there was a new model used, and there has been new wells added to Delhi, a decommissioned well for Simcoe. So that's causing changes that will come in the future. But we can't deal with those until the ministry approves them. So we're just starting a pre-consultation on those. So what we're doing here tonight is putting in place the approved source protection plan from 2016.
Okay, so will there be 2 more wells than 3A and B over and above the 2 that are already supplying Delhi?
It's my understanding that there are 2 more wells there now, and that the mapping just has not caught up with the reality of what we have on the ground.
So I guess, why would they not call it well 3 and 4 instead of 3A and 3B?
Through the mayor, I have no answer to how Public Works decided to name the wells.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, with respect to part of Councillor Columbus's question about the Lehman Reservoir water source, it's sort of my recollection, I could be wrong, that once those 2 new wells come online, which they either are or soon will be officially online, I think we were going to do away with the Lehman supply, partly because it is so much more vulnerable, first of all, and always a challenge to staff in terms of the operation. So that may or may not be correct. But Mr. Mayor, I did have 2 questions. Mary has essentially answered the first one, and that was that the outlines that are in the back of our proposed amendment showing the maps and where the WUPAs and the issue contributing area is for the Simcoe wells, those are the old versions, not the ones we just dealt with a week ago with that other report, from the looks of it. And I'm looking on page 18 of 22 of the proposed amendment, which is where the Simcoe, Cedar Street, and Northwest wells are, as an example.
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
These are the ones in the approved plan at this point.
So will we have to go through a further OP amendment, if you like, when those new delineated WIPAs and issue contributing areas are finally ready to be incorporated into our plan, or how will that be handled?
It's anticipated that once the ministry amends the source protection plan to update it with the water quantity policies, the water quantity mapping, and then the updated maps I showed you last week, there'll have to be another official plan and zoning amendment.
Well, I guess that's the way it's got to be, Mr. Mayor. Yes. My only other question relates to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs letter, and this is on page 159 of our agenda package, actually page 160 on the back, where the ministry suggests removing a number of potential land uses or significant threats from our zoning bylaw, and yet I see in the proposed zoning bylaw amendment on page 174 of our agenda, the same text is still there, and I guess I'm just confused, and if I am, probably we all are maybe. Did we incorporate that particular recommendation from the ministry to delete those activities or land use activities, because it says we can't address them through Section 57 prohibitions or through Section 58 risk management plan policies in our source protection plan? And I'm sorry if I haven't explained that very well, but I want to know if those things are still allowable, subject to a risk management plan or prohibition if they're within the WIPA A, as an example.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I understand the question correctly, and I'll try to answer this, the reason why in that particular comment, we did not change the bylaw because we felt that the intent of the bylaw is to simply list those prescribed drinking water threats such that everybody knows, it's obvious, it's self-evident, these are some of the threats. However, it's up to their RMO to determine whether that particular threat applies in every circumstance. So we didn't want to remove certain threats because we don't know as through the passage of time, some threats may be applicable, some may not be. So for that reason, we want to ensure that it's comprehensive, it's clear, people moving forward know that these are the threats that are of concern. They may not all be applicable in every circumstance, but this way, you're not having to amend your bylaw to add a threat, take a threat out. It's always there, and it's something that ultimately the RMO, who does the screening, would determine whether A is prohibited, or if it's not prohibited, you need a risk management plan. And once you get that risk management plan, then you can get a notice to proceed and file your application.
Thank you for that explanation, Pierre, and that's exactly what I was hoping you had done, so thank you.
Other questions to staff? None at this time. Is there anyone in attendance that wishes to speak in support of this proposed amendment? Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak in opposition or in general to the amendment? Anything further from council? I have a motion to close this public meeting. Wells and Sonnenberg have moved and seconded. Those in favor of closing? That is carried. Thank you. You have a copy of the resolution proposed by staff. What is your wishes? Councillor Black?
Well, I think it's time to get on with this. It's been a long road, so I would like to move the recommendation contained within the report.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Columbus. Black has moved. Columbus has seconded that staff report 1749 Long Point Regional Source Protection Plan implementation through county official plan and zoning amendments, which includes comments from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, be received as information, and that opportunity for public consultation was provided at open houses as the draft policies were developed and the final source protection plan developed, and further opportunity is provided at this public meeting. All comments were considered as part of this decision. And further, that Norfolk County Council approved the attached revised official plan amendment number 83 and related zoning bylaw amendment. Discussion on this resolution. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Mr. Chauvin, thank you for your attendance this evening. Good to see you. Thank you, Mary. Adam, you have been most patient this evening. Adam Biddle is here, so I'm going to do that report next. Thank you for your patience. So while you're getting up to the microphone, I am going to page 141. This is staff report Community Services Department 17-32. This is an award of a tender of ash tree removals, and this is Phase 2 of this year. Everyone's glad to see Adam, I see.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
This report is coming to council seeking authorization for the general manager of CSD to execute a contract with cleanup for the removal of ash trees along county roads. There's reports coming forward as it is funded from the issuance of debentures, and as such, we do require the approval of council. We brought forward a report earlier this year in which we approved the spending of $55,628 of the $200,000 approved for the total 2017 budget. This tender was issued to, clean up the remainder of those funds, being $144,000. We received 2 bids on the tender closing, one from Cleanup for $128,000 and one from Davy Tree Expert Company for $290,292.20. It is staff's recommendation that we award the tender to the lowest bidder, Cleanup, in the amount of $128,000.
Thank you very much, Adam. Councillor Black, questions to this gentleman?
Well, Adam, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but I'm still not really 100% clear on why this is debentured rather than placed in our operating budget. I don't know if you can answer that or if maybe Kathy can answer it. Seems
I know Kathy can.
Oh, that's,
Through the mayor to Councillor Black, I believe this is like the second or third phase for the ash tree removal program. We don't actually have any reserves set aside or any funds available to fund $200,000 over the 5 years. I think over the 5 years it may have totaled $1 million. I'm not sure exactly the numbers, but they've phased in the actual project. So we don't really have any reserves to fund it, so we're debenturing, and we have checked with Infrastructure in Ontario, and they have confirmed, and we have issued debentures on this type of project in the past.
I can understand that. Thank you.
Further, Councillor Wells?
Thank you very much. Just a question through you to Adam. Does this finish now, our ash trees, or are we still in the process of having to remove more?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wells, this is Phase 3 of 5, so we will be coming forward for 2 more additional years. We are in good shape. We've cleaned up all the ash trees in the urban centers. This phase here is seeing the removal of all the ash trees along our arterial roads. Next year, we're prepared to bring forward another report for the removal of 700 trees along concession roads. And the final phase, we'll be looking at, more used trail areas and the such.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus?
Question, how many dollars have we expended to date with respect to the various phases? Any idea?
If we're coming in close to 600 now, I think we've been just under annually, so
600,000.
close to 600,000, correct?
I
Yeah.
noticed, I was in the Niagara area yesterday, and I noticed a lot of ash trees are still up alongside the roads in a dangerous situation. So I think we're well ahead of other municipalities.
To Council Columbus, yeah, we're definitely in better shape than some areas. Some areas have a higher ash component. We're finding in Norfolk specifically, it varies significantly between towns and say Houghton centers, just the soil type and that. You get higher ash component in certain areas, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is a simple one, Adam. The previous tender that we issued this year with a total cost of $55,628, can you tell us how many trees were actually cut down within that tender?
Through the mayor to Councilor Oliver, I was hoping you wouldn't ask that because I didn't have that number in front of me. It was a significant amount. The difference between that tender and this tender was those trees were in a natural area in Dover. We were dealing with a lot of ravines. That bid was significantly lower than we would have expected. I think the average came out to like $60 to $70 a tree. It was something substantially lower. And a lot of those removals were drop the tree, bucket up, and no chipping. So the work varied a little bit. These are all roadside ash,
Okay.
More substantial size. So that's part and parcel for the price difference.
Okay, thank you for that.
Counselor Sonnenberg?
Thank you. Adam, I missed what you said about cleaning the concession roads. Did you have a date for that? I know there's many trees marked down my road, and I'm just wondering when they're going to be removed.
Once we get final approval for budget next year, we've got a tender ready to go, so it'll be start of next year.
Next year?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? Moved by Counselor Wells, seconded by Counselor Columbus. Staff report CSD 1732. This is the award of tender ash tree removals. It's phase 2 for this year. Be received as information that the general manager for community services be authorized to execute a contract with cleanup for the supply of the necessary labor, materials, and equipment for the removal of ash trees as specified in the tender, and this is in the amount of $128,000 excluding taxes, and further, that the ash tree removal project be funded from the issuance of debentures up to a maximum of $200,000, not to exceed 5 years. Any discussion on this further? Those in favor? Thank you. Let's go back to page 135 in your agenda. This is staff report 17-63. This is the new Lakeshore Road Drain 2015 construction. Mr. Dunn, you're still here. Thank you for hanging around. I'll turn it over to you, please.
It's been a pleasure. Through the mayor to council, the report before you used to deal with the construction of the new Lakeshore Road Drain. Since the public meeting to consider the contract price did not affect the validity of the petition, staff are recommending that council provide authorization to staff to execute the contract with the lowest compliant bidder and proceed with construction. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions? Councillor Brunton, then Oliver, please.
Very quickly, I noticed, and I had it marked down, the difference in the cost and the total project. Could you tell me, Mr. Bowler was here tonight, I see he's left, but you know, was he assessed? Did you have his amount? I didn't see his schedule. Was that in there?
The schedule wasn't actually provided within the report, but within the report, Mr. Bowler's original assessment was supposed to be $13,000.
Okay. Was there any other assessments?
Any other assessments? We have an updated, an approximated assessment schedule for all landowners that the engineers provided.
Okay, I wouldn't mind seeing that if you could email it.
Yep, we can. I can definitely forward that over after.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think, that means you'll send it to all of us? Because normally we would see the engineer's report, I think, with these things, wouldn't we have?
So the engineer's report would have actually been brought forward quite some time ago, because then it would have went through the first, second, and third reading of the bylaws.
Yeah.
Now, this is after the fact. You would never have seen this project again if the price didn't come in over the threshold.
Okay. Because my other question, or my original question was going to be, could you just give us a 30-second thumbnail of what the work will consist of? I see from the air photo on page 139, it shows the extent of the actual drainage work on the south side of the Lakeshore Road. Is that going to be underground buried pipe? Is it going to be exposed channel with riprap? I should have remembered that from the engineering report several years ago. I acknowledge, or whenever it was, but can you give us literally a 30-second summary of?
So the major work is going to consist of road crossing underneath of New Lakeshore Road. That's going to go into a spillway that will empty out into Lake Erie. There's going to be quite significant amount of riprap and actually retaining infrastructure to keep the erosion at bay.
Yeah.
There's also additional roadside ditch cleaning that's going to happen on the north side of New Lakeshore Road. And I believe that the number's around 450 meters
Okay, I do remember that now, so. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Geisens.
page 139, and I'm looking at the small area that the drain actually is. And I guess the question is this, I believe there's about $30,000 or something that some of the houses or the road, or the land across the road, I guess, who's going to pay? I haven't seen who's actually being assessed on this drain.
Are you looking for names of individuals?
So I'm
or
just wondering, and normally when we get some kind, we actually know who's paying for that, but we're not seeing it this time, so.
And that would have been provided in the original drainage report when it would have come forward to council.
Okay, well then, I apologize for that.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Columbus?
Well, just to follow up, is the property owner, I understand that the county's basically paying the bulk of this, right? What percentage would that be? Pretty well 90-something.
I wouldn't be able to give you exact percentages unless Sean can do some quick math. The landowners on the project are paying approximately $34,000 of the total $235,000. So Norfolk County is, in fact, picking up the bulk of the cost.
Okay. So the property owner to the north, that large field that we see on this map on page 139, are they assessed for drainage improvements as well?
Yes, they are. They're assessed quite heavily, actually, due to the amount of area that's in proportion to the other landowners that are assessed on the drain.
Okay, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Further questions? Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Geisens that this staff report 1763, the new Lakeshore Road Drain 2015 construction be received as information, and that staff be authorized to execute a contract with the lowest compliant bidder on request for tender number PWD 1703, new Lakeshore Road Drain 2015. Any discussion on this resolution? Hearing none. Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you, and thank you very much, Chris. We have a little ways to go. Do you want to keep pushing, or do you want to have a little 5-minute stretch? Your call. Pardon? Well, then we're going to keep moving ahead. Okay, we'll go back to item number 8 on the agenda. We have 3 consent items. The first one is the Honorable Peter Milzen. He is the Minister of Housing. This is mandatory service. This is provided by Housing Services Corporation, August 31st, 2017. Ann Robillard on item B is requesting a special occasion permit, Radical Lines, October 21st, 2017. And Paul Hozak, a temporary liquor license extension for October the 12th through to October the 14th, 2017 at 200 Main Street in Port Dover. Item A is for information. Item B and C is recommending approval subject to receipt of the requirements. It's been moved by Councillor Oliver and seconded by Councillor Wells that consent items A through C inclusive be approved as recommended, subject to meeting all other required approvals. Any discussion on the motion or any of those consent items? Hearing none, those in favor? Bless you, that's carried. We'll now go to reports of committees. We'll start on page 13. myself reorganized here. Okay, page 13, it's been moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Geisens, that the minutes of the council and committee meeting of September the 19th, 2017 be approved as presented. Anything to discuss there from our council and committee meeting of last week? If not, those in favor? Carried. On to page 19, moved by Councillor Oliver, seconded by Councillor Geisens, that the minutes of the Norfolk Environmental Advisory Committee of August 14th, 2017 be received as information. Discussion on those minutes of the Environmental Advisory Committee minutes. Those in favor? It's carried. Item C, page 23, moved by Wells, seconded by Councillor Oliver, that the minutes of the Port Dover Harbor Museum Advisory Committee of June 5th, 2017 be received as information. Discussion. In favor? Carried. Page 27, moved by Geisens, seconded by Columbus, that the minutes of the Norfolk County Accessibility Advisory Committee of August the 15th, 2017 be received as information. Discussion on those. Hearing none, those in favor? Carried. Okay, that's it for our committee reports. Item 12, I don't believe there's any reports of council members. Are there any on committees you sit on? I'm now going to go to bylaws. I'm on page 179 of the agenda. I have a seconder, Councillor Sonnenberg. I do not have a mover for the bylaws. Thank you, Councillor Geisens. Geisens has moved, Sonnenberg has seconded that bylaw 11 OP 2017 and bylaw 37Z 2017 through bylaw 44Z 2017 inclusive be passed, signed by the mayor and clerk and affixed with the corporate seal. Any discussion? Those in favor of approving those bylaws, they are approved. Thank you. Okay, 11, 12, 13. Motions, item 14. There's one motion before us. I'm going to read it, then we'll open it for discussion. It's been moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Geisens that recommendation number 62 of the council operating budget minutes of January the 24th, 25th, 27th, and 30th of 2017, which reads as follows, be rescinded, that a hiring freeze be placed upon all new full-time positions, and that staff be directed to continue to work and hire within the overall allotted full-time complement number as approved by council. Councillor Wells, do you wish to speak, please?
I do wish to speak to this, Mr. Mayor, and I thank you very much for the opportunity. I have put this motion forward, asking to have it withdrawn, and some people might suggest that's rather strange for me because I prefer not to hire new staff. However, the reason that I have put it forward is pretty simple. I've run out of excuses to explain to the public why we are still hiring, adding to our staff complement when we have a hiring freeze. Over the past 8 years, since we introduced or passed the so-called hiring freeze, we have averaged 4 hirings per year. That doesn't count all the consultants, the part-time or temporary staff, or short-term replacements that we have added. Reminds me of my previous employment in education, where we kept hiring, reducing class sizes, paying more money, but we were rewarded with less than favorable results. And just to emphasize that, in yesterday's paper from the Sun, I'd just like to read a couple of things from this, which says, Ontario low math scores suggest an education crisis. Only half the grade 6 students met the provincial average. In Toronto District School Board, only 28% of grade 9 students in applied math met the provincial average. While the public spending in Ontario education system rose by 36.6% to $26.6 billion in 2014 and 15, while the student enrollment fell by 5.6%. Only 44% of Ontario's grade 9 students in the applied stream met the provincial literacy test. The question we need to ask ourselves, by hiring more staff, are we providing better service to our ratepayers? Or are our ratepayers getting the same thing that is happening in education? I can't speak for all of Norfolk County, but I can truthfully say I don't think the residents in my ward are extremely pleased with the service that they are receiving from Norfolk County. Strange how we hire more, spend millions on electronics, but we can't keep up. I sometimes wonder how we ever managed to succeed and make progress in the olden days. So let's not continue to embarrass ourselves. As a parent, when my son wanted something, he could make the best argument in the world, but I could say no. He didn't like it, but he survived. Too bad, in politics, the same philosophy doesn't apply. It seems that we never are able to say no and mean no. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further discussion? You've heard the motion. Hearing no further discussion, those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Motion is carried. So the motion is for reconsideration. So we'll need a two-thirds majority. So reading the motion is okay, but we need two-thirds, right?
In order for the motion to pass, you need 6 to vote in favor, and then we can discuss the actual hiring freeze. I know, Mr. Mayor, you gave Councillor Wells an opportunity to present it, but actually we should have voted on reconsideration before he
My
presented
apologies for that. I guess I didn't realize it was a motion for reconsideration. And it would be a motion of reconsideration because we're within the 1 year from last budget. Yeah, I'm not thinking too straight on that. You say there's 8 here, myself included. 6 is 75. Sorry, 6 out of 8 is 75%. We need two-thirds. My math's not too sharp. I know you've done the math, but I'm just checking. 5.33, we need 6. You are correct. Okay, I'm going to call the question again on this motion of reconsideration, and we do need 7, not 6, but 7 out of the 8 of us, pardon me, 7 out of 8. 6 out of 8, pardon me. I'll be okay. 6 out of 8, so I'll call the question again for reconsideration. Those in favor to reconsider? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? The motion to reconsideration is defeated. My apologies. You did have, no, don't you be sorry, you put in the agenda reconsideration. I just wasn't thinking. No notice of motions this evening. We'll go to other business before we get to confirming bylaw. I'm going to start with council, I'll start with staff. You want to tell us anything good, Kathy? You got anything exciting for us? Nope. Thanks for being here this evening. Yakov, do you have anything you'd like to share? Okay, thank you. Good to see you. Mr. Baird? You all right? How about you, Mr. County Manager?
No, thank
No, Mr. Cribbs on this side. I'm Mr. Cridlin. Mr. Cribbs is this side, Cridlin this side. Mr. Cridlin.
you. Nothing for Mr. Cridlin either.
Ms. Miranda.
Nothing, thank you.
And Mr. Van Acker.
Nothing from me either.
Okay, what about you, Mr. Clerk? You'd have something.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do have something very quick. I'd just like to remind everybody, we are advertising again for the Port Dover Harbor Marina Committee. So if council members or staff or the public know of anybody who's interested, please encourage them to apply, because I think the next step is I'm going to go over to Mr. Cridland and say, do we need to do a report about whether or not we need this committee? So now is the time, everybody.
Thank you for that. On this topic, Mr. Brunton?
Question, sounded very negative. What's the scoop? Nobody applied, or you have some?
Yeah, this would be the third time that we've been advertising. So it's just one of those things. We want to make sure that people are aware of it and come out and apply for it. Yeah.
You don't answer my question. How many, do you have any?
We did have some. I don't believe we've come close to a full complement yet, though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to, again. Councillor Geisens, please. Councillor Columbus?
Mr. Mayor, I just wondered when the capital budget report would be coming out for councillors to have a peek at.
Even give us an idea.
Mayor to Councillor Columbus, the plan is for October 4th, so it should be out early next week.
Okay, beginning of next week.
Thank you.
Councillor Oliver?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to remind the public that may still be watching us, hopefully, and our media friends, that the rescheduled meeting for public consultation on our recreation facility needs happening in Waterford is this Thursday evening at, doors open 6:30 p.m. The meeting will start at 7 p.m. at the Waterford Public School. And there should be lots of room.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sonnenberg? Councillor Wells? Councillor Black?
I don't know who put this on our desk, but whoever did, I'm happy they did. But I'd like to refer to it as Cultural Days 2017, and it's a presentation of the Cantillon paintings, Edgar Cantillon, like Norfolk's one and only, and there's some 300 paintings that the Everbrook Donnelly Museum has in their collection, and they're loaning them out to the various libraries throughout Norfolk County. And if you were to look through it, I'm sure some of you will recognize some of the facilities. They still exist today, and it's a real historical record in painting of significantly historical buildings and scenery throughout Norfolk County. I can actually, if you look at the Simcoe one, I know it says the old fire hall. And that old fire hall, if you can find it there, actually still exists today on Wyndham Street across from the old North School. It's a house. It was just about 2 doors down from where I used to live on 312 Colburn Street North. The Harriets used to live in that building. And that was the old fire hall for the northern part of Simcoe, which was referred to as Wellington Heights. So there's that painting, and then if you look at the old post office, that's the post office that Duncan Campbell first established, and it was over by Bud's. And it was moved to the location on Kent Street South, and now Diane Finlay's office. So if you look at the date of that, that's 1829. And if you go through it, even like Normandale, Waterford and Delhi, there's all buildings in here that I'm sure you probably can recognize some of them, that they actually exist today. Very interesting, and I think people will find it very interesting, very historically significant. And also, our one and only Melissa Culver will be speaking about Edgar Cantillon at the Everbrook Donnelly Museum in December. I think it's the 7th, but as we get closer, maybe we'll make that announcement exactly when it is, but I'm sure it will be very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Luke, I have about 7 items here to, No, I just have to bring one thing to our attention, and I'm sure you all received the letter from Mr. Barrett about the gas wells. And I raised this issue last week, and in his letter, he outlined his request to the Premier and the Ministry to, and I'll read it.
And if I may, while you read it, the first item on our information package was a copy.
Correct.
Just if somebody wants to follow it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyways, it's in the last paragraph. It says, Minister, will the MNRF detail why it took 2 years to pressure from Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit, Norfolk County, et cetera, to deal with the situation? Seriously, will Norfolk County be compensated for municipal time and resources to deal with this? Will the grants be compensated? It goes on into detail, but I guess I asked the question last week, and I guess to the county manager, not to put you on the spot, but we wanted the details of our cost, and I find it odd that Mr. Barrett would ask for it when he probably doesn't know what it is, the amount. So could you give me on a date or approximation when we might have a figure that we could forward to him?
7 weeks ago, I was asked that question in this chamber, and I told you you'd have a report in 30 days, and now we're counting down to 23. It'll be roughly 3 weeks from today. 2 if we're able to gather the data faster, and 4 if there's a problem. But we still, I don't think it's a really interesting answer, but the truth is you have to go through a pay cycle to get all the data out of the payroll system, because wages are a significant consideration. So and payday's not till Thursday. So until we go through that, I know we can't account for what we think is the totality of the cost. So at least that has to happen, a couple triggering events. But I have undertaken to provide that information to council in roughly 3 weeks, 2 if we're fast, 4 if we're slow, but that's the time frame, sir.
Okay, and in that request, it says, will the grants be compensated? That's one of the property owners, I assume, that was exited from his home. Are we in any way compensating them, or will that be something we would recover for them and possibly pass that on to the ministry?
Part of the report I'll provide you will be in camera for a number of reasons, so I'm not able to give you a fulsome answer to that, or a complete answer to that in public. I can indicate to you, and I am very proud to note, that our finance department took it upon itself to do some investigation, and we have sent letters to all of the residents who were affected, the 6 residences.
Right.
Allowing them to take advantage, or inviting them to take advantage of provisions under the Municipal Act that allow for a municipality to waive some amount of property taxes in the event that the property becomes unusable. I'm paraphrasing in the plain English, for its intended purpose through no fault of one's own. And those residents in those residences may well elect to do so. So there is some potential, that is an offer or an opportunity for those individuals. That being said, it is not the purpose of the corporation of the County of Norfolk to advocate on behalf of individual residents with respect to their interaction with the province. We'll be looking to our own primarily.
So if we do give them a tax break for whatever reason, we will go after that compensation also, I would assume.
Again, it's premature to me to give you an answer at this point in time. We will have a fulsome discussion in due course, roughly 3 weeks from now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brunton. I'll finish up here on a couple of items. Just a reminder to the public, and of course, we're well aware that next week we don't meet Tuesday, we meet Monday at 3 o'clock due to the fact that the Norfolk County Fair opens on Tuesday. We certainly have had some great weather for our fall fairs. It's been good warm weather in Langton last Wednesday. I saw Councillor Guys and Councillor Wells both break out in a sweat during the water. Councillor Oliver, you were there too. Yes, you were. No, you weren't. No, I would have remembered. And I wasn't either, so. Anyhow, and certainly on the weekend, for those that attended the Donnybrook Fair, it's a tad warm. Good turnout there. I go to Houghton this Thursday, and I know there's rain forecast, but they'll have the fair before the rain comes, and next week I hope that the good weather continues for Norfolk County. Last night, as Councillor Oliver, I believe, mentioned in Port Dover, our first of 6. I just wanted to say to the members of that committee and staff, that was very well done last evening. Very well presented and very well that we received input from our public. A lot of dialogue, a lot of good exchange of ideas. I was very impressed with the whole evening, and just wanted to say, and under your leadership, Mr. Chair, you did very well done last evening, so I really appreciate that. Just about done. I did also on the weekend attend the new trail at Long Point, the Pathways for People. We went for a walk down Erie, and I have to say that the north side, I call it the north side, the bay side of Erie Ave, the bike and walking path from the corner, the causeway, right down to Pike Ave is just extremely well done and well used, as I witnessed on Sunday. And finally, the last thing I wanted to just mention in our information package, again, a rather lengthy memo from Mr. Cribbs and Mr. Griselle on the Bill 68. A lot of things coming our way to look at. We won't get into any of it tonight. It's just a heads up here of things. I really appreciate quite a bit of work went into this, but there will be some things for us to deal with, I'm sure. Down the road, as always, I will go to the confirming bylaw now, and it's been moved by Wells and Columbus, the bylaw 2017-99 being a bylaw to